Okay, can we please call the meeting to order?
Mr. Melody.
Here.
Mr. Valentine.
Here.
Mrs. Silva.
Here.
Mrs. Gillis.
Here.
Mrs. Rigby.
Here.
Okay, for the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, we have some guests from Bailey Elementary School.
All right, good evening, everybody. While they're lining up, my name is Sean Ritter. I'm the principal at Bailey Elementary, and tonight I have the special honor of bringing along with me members of our 5th grade safety patrol team to deliver the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. At this time, I invite everybody to stand up. Yes, you ready? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to take a quick picture with our board if you don't mind coming around.
Mr. Redley.
Everybody ready? 1,
Good job.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
This kid in the blue lives on my street. His dad's name?
Guys, let's turn and face Chris Valentine. All right, Board of Education, I'd like to introduce a couple of our fifth grade Bailey Safety Patrol members. Again, we have over 40 members who signed up in fifth grade alone to participate. This is certainly very popular, and we're grateful they were able to be here with us tonight. With us, we have fifth grader Tegan Gans. We have fifth grader Eliza Olberding. Abby Gastolan. Parker Moore. May Adachi. Fifth grader Emma Stores. Fifth grader Cameron Bicking. Fifth grader Emmett Berlin. Fifth grader Bela Yadav. Dylan Valentine. Fifth grader Quinn Summers. And fifth grader Charles Geisinger. Guys, great job. Thank you.
Great job. Great job. Oh, I missed him. Oh, no.
Lots of us forgotten James yet.
Good job, guys.
Okay, thank you everyone from Bailey Elementary School. It was nice to have you here this evening. All right, next we have a recommendation. There's a motion to appoint Tyson Hodges as Treasurer Pro Tem for this board meeting this evening. Mr. Kern is unable to be with us. Appointment to terminate automatically upon the close of the meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Rigby.
Yes.
Mr. Valentine.
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis.
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Melody.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, it is recommended to approve the August 8th regular board meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. De Silva.
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby.
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis.
Yes.
Mr. Melody.
Yes.
Mr. Valentine.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, there's a motion to approve, is recommended there approve the August 22nd regular work session meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. Valentine.
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva.
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis.
Yes.
Mr. Melody.
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. And then it is recommended that we approve the agenda as presented for this evening, September 12th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Questions or comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gillis.
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby.
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Melody.
Yes.
Mr. Valentine.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right, now we have a presentation on the Dublin Education Foundation, year in review.
Hello, my name is Melissa Bogue. My bad. I'm Melissa Vogner again, and I am delighted to present with my fellow board member and mentor and DCS advocate for 28 years, Ms. Deb Pappish tonight. We're going to speak on the Dublin Education Foundation and give a little shout out to an amazing group of outstanding student leaders and educator Ann Fuller. But before I do that, a little overview on Dublin Education Foundation. So the foundation was established in 1999, and in a little less than 25 years, we have been able to grant over 300 grants to Dublin teachers. We also give an annual scholarship of $1,000 to 3 of our seniors at each of our high schools. Our board is a membership of all volunteers, and we represent across all the district. Thank you to our 2 members here who have served currently as a liaison to the Dublin Education Foundation, but also both as board members in prior years.
Again, my name is Deb Papish, and I'm a 28-year veteran volunteer here in Dublin City Schools. So proud of the ability to work in a district at this level. I was a former educator and grant writer and actually received DEF grants and other grants, and they finally just asked me to serve on the board so they could stop giving me money, I think. So now we have to figure out how to give people more money because our teachers, our classroom staff, everybody in a building, our custodians, our secretaries, everybody is worthy, and we love the partnership. So let's talk for a moment about the partnerships that we have. We have started, if you look right on the right-hand side there, we have the Nick Rosansky Memorial Foundation, Dublin Community Foundation, Dublin Schools themselves, the Ohio State University, and some other great collaborators. Those are funding collaborators and sometimes just thought collaborators, and we are so grateful for that. Tonight we are here to honor a group of young people and their mentor. Their mentor is teacher Ann Fuller, who teaches computer science here in the district, and Drudy Shaw, yep, and everybody who's here. This is the Dublin Tech Club, and just part of them. We have representation from all 3 high schools. Tonight I think we have do we have Jerome and Sciota also, yay, okay. Yes, but the hearts are across our district, and we keep building. I would like to, Melissa and I would both like to say thank you to Ann Fuller for stepping up as a 2-time grant recipient, and she has now found a way to actually give back to our schools. So as a teacher, she is taking this Dublin Tech mindset, and they are all giving back by hosting a Coding for Community camp. Brainchild of the students and Ann. They came to Melissa and I and said we would like to have a camp, and all of the money goes back to DEF, from which we were able to garner sponsorship. So isn't that wonderful? So I'd like to give a round of applause to our young leaders. DEF stands for the Dublin Education Foundation, and we support innovative grant thinking, and we want teachers and building personnel in general to be able to come up with a neat model that they can disseminate into other schools, right? So a place for learning and trying, and this right here is as innovative as you can get. We'd also like to thank again the Nick Rosansky Foundation, Columbus Community Foundation, Dublin Schools. Thank you, Christy Venny, for helping us to find things, and OSU Extension Office, which we are working closely with to help Jeff Stark and the buildings crew so we don't have gardens that are overgrown. So I'm gonna let Melissa talk more. I will be all over the place. You guys know me.
As Deb mentioned, our partnerships, we are very thankful for. The number of grants last year increased dramatically. So our teachers have requested about $38,000 in grants. The Dublin Education Foundation was able to fulfill $25,000 of that. But the remaining $12,000 came from the Nick Rosansky Foundation, the Nick Rosansky Memorial Foundation, sorry. The Dublin Community Foundation, partnerships with Dublin Schools, and then in-kind donations from Ohio State's Extension Office. And that is exactly where we see ourselves going in the future, is to continue our community awareness and these partnerships so that we don't have to limit the number of grants that we can give, but that we can multiply them. And when we get a good grant, we don't want it just to be a grant for Sciota, a grant for Riverside. We want to take that idea and be able to replicate it and disseminate it to our other schools. And that's our ultimate goal, is to identify those trends, those great grants, provide feedback to you as the board and administrators to say, hey, 75% of our grants are coming from 7th grade English teachers. Maybe we need to see why the 7th grade English teachers don't have the funding. So whatever trends we see, we would love to share them back and just be able to continually support and improve Dublin schools.
So thank you, Christy Venny, for stepping up and helping us. She has been amazing. She's also an out-of-the-box thinker, which helps us so much. Jen Schwanke was also on our team there for a little bit. But we're just so grateful, and our teachers have been working on the dollar impact challenge, which the treasurer's office has seen. So many of our teachers come up with that base of $12,000, which is fantastic. It's $1 a pay period. So we're just grateful. We are so blessed to live in a community that does so many great things, and we want to give that gratitude first every day. And we're going to keep working hard. We want to make over 40,000 this year. So big goals. We're ready to go after it, and our team is ready to go too. So any questions from any of you?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you for all that you do. Both of you are just amazing, and we are appreciative of everything that you do for Dublin City Schools.
Thank you, both you and Lindsay, for serving. We appreciate it. It helps to have the connections inside. Anything else? Thank you again, Ann Fuller. Drudy is the leader of Dublin Tech, and yes, there she is. And this entire group of young leaders and thinkers, they are leaving to go to their next step in life with skill sets intact, and we are so proud of them. So thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you for the great update. All right, public participation for items on the agenda. There is no one signed up this evening. Board of Education committees, assignments, any updates that board members have?
Yes, I have one from the Athletic Council meeting, which was last week. Exciting news to start it, that bowling will be started this winter, so everyone was excited about that. They talked about coaching evaluations, and these are done at the end of each season at the varsity high school level. And these will be done, the evaluations will be done for the coaches, and we're trying to kind of coincide with the end of the season. So in previous years, it hasn't always fallen that way. So the fall season, the evaluations will be done January 1, winter April 1st, and then spring July 1st. Also, evaluations will also be done by the students for, again, varsity high school athletics, and they're really kind of in the form of surveys that go out anonymously, so the athletes can talk about their experience, and this will help with coaching, program needs, and other ways to evaluate the coaches. So that will be done, like I said, across varsity sports. They talked also about the coaching certification. There's something called a coach's tool chest, which is a subscription-based program. It's about $50 a year. We have 550 coaches, so to full-scale, fund this would be about $27,500. What this tool chest includes, though, is Lindsay's Law, concussion testing, first aid, a bunch of different things. So it's like a one-stop shop for coaches, and it's about a 2-hour program. So there was just talk about how it would be funded. Either the coaches fund themselves, the district funds the program, or, you divide it, half the coaches, half the district. So there was talk about just how to, everyone thinks it's a good program, it's just how to fund that. R-Factor training, we just need to get those coaches trained who are not in the buildings. And then there was a lot of talk about officials. There's a dire need for officials, as anyone who has a kid in sports knows. Spring is going to be a real challenge. Middle schools will be hit the hardest. Basically, you just can't find officials. And so, again, the council was really proactive, trying to come up with ways that, we can address this problem. And there was even mention, could we pay a staff member to become trained? So, again, just kind of in the early stages, but trying to get ahead of it because it is going to be an issue. Athletic facilities update. Mr. Allring was working with operations to get a plan in place for the next 5 to 10 years. He said we need to look beyond the immediate needs of tennis and track. Ohio Health, lots of changes in the trainers, all good. People getting in different spots, people getting promoted. Some people have moved out, but it's all good. And the last thing that I loved is that the group shared success stories, and there were many across different schools, and there were success stories the parents shared about their own child as an athlete. And the phrase that I love that came out of it is, sometimes the sport does more for the kid than the kid does for the sport. So I just thought that was a really great way to end the meeting, but that's it.
All right, thank you for that update. Are there any other board or committee updates? Just call out, tomorrow morning is the first BAC meeting of the year at 8 a.m. here. And Wednesday evening is the first key communicators meeting of the year. So we'll have some more updates in the future. All right, then we will turn it over to Dr. Marshausen for superintendent updates.
Thank you, Mr. Melody. I'll start tonight with a review and update on our book selection process, some of the ways that we reviewed some books that were brought to our attention with concerns, and an update on some of the policies that the board approved for update in May and June, and we've implemented and done training with our staff. There was an article posted today on our district's website that outlines a lot of what I'm going to talk about. The article also has a direct link to all of the books that were reviewed by our committee. That committee not only reviewed the books that specific concerns were brought to us by parents, but it reviewed all of the books that were part of a larger donation that took place prior to my arrival here in the Dublin City Schools. The guiding principles that were used by this committee were really focused on parent partnership. One of the things that clearly came out of our Parent Diversity Committee is we have parents who feel strongly about advocating for their family values to be part of their child's education. And in some cases, those family values are very progressive thinking in the materials that are available to children. And in some of those conversations, the family values are more conservative and would like the home to be the place where students learn about certain topics. I believe that as a district, we have the opportunity to do both. I believe as a district that our teachers have historically partnered exceptionally well with families to make sure that families' desires are what takes place in our classrooms. We rely on expert guidance when it comes to what books should be available in our media centers. We rely on the American Library Association. We rely on other external groups to not only talk to us about content, but about lexile level, about grade level appropriateness, and about age appropriateness. When we look at the books that were challenged, some of those books were moved from elementary to middle school. In some cases, those books may have been assigned by the American Library Association to a 5-9 grade level band. And if that was a grade level band, appropriateness in terms of target audience is more focused in our middle schools than in our elementary schools. There were several books that were placed in counselors' offices for specific needs that would allow a counselor in a group talk or in a specific situation to work with a child. All of those books remain as part of the Dublin City Schools resource list. And as we move forward, I think our bigger challenge and our commitment is to have those connections with parents. As I said today, and as we said in our release today, that the goal is if parents have specific needs for their children, that they reach out to their teachers. Many of our teachers in their surveys with parents early in the year asked, are there any things that we should know about your child's reading, your family, things that would help me as a teacher get to know your youngster. So those are things that really are our guiding principles. I know that for some, this is a very important topic, and as such, so that we can continue to have a dialogue, next Monday here in this room from 6:30 to 8, we'll be hosting a community conversation specifically dedicated to the book review process and the policy changes that were made going into this school year. Those policy changes include some of the conversations about supervision of students, how we would, if a student is having social emotional challenges, if a student is having mental health challenges, if a student is questioning who they are, It's not what a teacher should be doing, it's how do we get a counselor in front of that child? How do we use our resources? I think over the past several years, we have asked teachers probably to do more and more and more each year. We want to make sure that we have the professionals working with our students in those spaces. So as we look through this next Monday, I'll be here. I'll have a brief presentation. I'll review the process a little bit more in depth than I did tonight. I will review each of the policies that were changed during the summer and what that means in terms of the real life day-to-day for our students and our teachers in our classrooms. And I'm hopeful that anybody who has any questions will be able to join us at that meeting. Me advancing my computer isn't going to help. As I said earlier, I think we've continued to ask more and more from our teachers. And one of the things that we've done over the years is we've provided ALICE training and run hide fight training to our teachers. And in order to provide the best possible and safest learning environment for our teachers and our students, I'm going to be recommending that we hire right now 2 retired police officers from the Dublin area to serve as elementary safety coordinators. And I'd like to invite Mr. Collier in. Chuck, if you come join us for a moment. Chuck is a retired Dublin police officer. He is our coordinator of district safety and security. And we've been talking with Chief Pice and have a vision for how we can provide our elementary schools with some resource. So, Chuck, if you could just share what we've been talking about and how we think this would work.
So, yeah, currently we have 8 total police officers in our buildings. Middle and high schools are covered. What those middle school SROs do is check in with the elementary schools, and we would continue that. We're not going to take police out of checking in on the elementary schools. But what these 2 positions would do is give us the ability to, again, refocus teachers and staff on doing the schoolwork and letting these experts come in and be that safety piece, be that first line of defense, so to speak, in those buildings. John and I have talked about this, where roughly 5 elementary schools per officer, per coordinator, which would give them the ability to check in with those elementaries multiple times a week, whenever needed, whenever that principal or that administrator reaches out to them or to stop by and do whatever is necessary.
And the chief has been gracious. Like Chuck, they would be given police radios. So in the event that something needed to be communicated immediately to police, they would be able to do that. We would have them in our school cars, so they would be able to go from location to location. We have 4 elementary schools where this probably is not necessary, because those elementary schools are on a campus with a middle school. So if you think about Deer Run, Depp, Old Sawmill, and Indian Run, they are adjacent to a building that has an SRO, where that SRO is easily able to get to those schools. You know, we talk about response time. A week and a half ago, there was a fan at Sciota High School that started to smoke. Everything happened like it was supposed to. The breaker tripped, the fan was stopped, but we evacuated the building. Within a minute and a half, we had multiple police cars and multiple fire engines, and within 3 minutes, I think we had 14 fire engines there and 12 police cars. Our response time is amazing. Our first responders do a phenomenal job. This would be for those schools that we don't have those SROs next door. It would be another layer of eyes, right? Someone else who's trained to do threat assessments, someone else who's always looking to see what's going on. And it's a step that I believe could grow over time as we have more retirement. So I'm not asking for the board to vote tonight, but I am asking, are there any objections from the board or any questions for me or Chuck from the board as we pull this together? I don't want to get out over my skis if this isn't something that the 5 of you are supportive of.
The current officers that are assigned to the buildings, especially elementary, will they continue to stay with them, or?
Yeah, so like I thought I mentioned, so each middle school has anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 elementaries that they check in on a regular basis. that would continue.
Okay.
We still want that day one growth of relationship from those SROs and those young students. I think that's better for our community. I think that's better for the individual, not just the police officer, but for those kids in those buildings to see that friendly face, that safe place coming in on a regular basis.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I know the answer to this, but I know it'll be a question we get from members of the community. Obviously, the SROs that we're talking about are able to carry, and they're active law enforcement. In the case of Chuck, these two folks, can you explain for somebody who would ask that question what the answer would be?
It's a conversation that we haven't quite landed the plane yet. When we would start, the answer would be they would not be carrying, but it is a conversation that's ongoing. Retired law enforcement, if they maintain their weapon certification, could be a consideration that we would bring to you as a board. It would take board action for you to be able to do that, and you could set the stipulations of who it is. So as we started this, if we started this and if I brought you a job description and potentially names at the end of September, when they started, the answer would be no, but it is a conversation that the chief and I and Chuck and the deputy chiefs have been having, pros and cons, what that means if we did want retired law enforcement to be able to carry.
And do we envision an actual home base for these men or women?
Well, we envision them coming someplace to pick up their car because we would want them in a school vehicle when they were going around. We would ask, for example, Penny is our building that is in Delaware County. It's probably the furthest away, probably a first stop for one of these officers. And then as you look at which schools we would have them rotate to, there would be either a natural rotation or an ability for them to be called. And our principals know when there's a potentially contentious meeting, when there's a situation that they may want just somebody around to have. The other thing is, again, someone walking each building every day to identify, here's a door that could potentially be an issue for us. Here's a practice that if we improve this as the kids go out and back for recess. Having someone there every day working with our administration, I can't tell you how many times our high school and middle school principals partner with their SROs and just make little tweaks to how they do things throughout the day. And those little tweaks are things that you never know but could potentially make a big difference in the event that someone was trying to do harm. Okay, thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it. Along those same lines, as we talk about how we can better provide support to our community and to our students, NetCare, which has been for years an inpatient mental health facility for young people, is closing its doors in November, which makes Nationwide Children's Hospital the only inpatient facility in Central Ohio for us to send children in crisis. The concern with Nationwide Children is they built an amazing, beautiful pavilion, and it's at capacity with the staff that they have now, which means our local hospitals are getting children in crisis for mental health issues. And our local hospitals aren't staffed and then quickly become over capacity, dealing with issues that it's a challenge for us. And we know that if a parent called today to get an appointment at Nationwide Children's, we're probably talking about 6 to 8 months before you could get in with your child. We know in schools that if we are able to intervene sooner, if we are able to provide resources to students and to families sooner, we hope to avoid students getting into crisis situations. If we look at a more school-based mental health service plan, that not only serves our students and our families better, that also allows our students to learn more. And ultimately, we know that a student has to be healthy, both physically and mentally, in order for them to learn at their highest potential. Just to make our board aware and our community aware, we met with Ohio State School of Social Workers on Friday. Chris and I, we've been talking with the DeWine administration, Chancellor Gardner, Director Chris, about creating a pipeline for counselors to the Dublin City School District. My hope is to make Dublin a model where we would be able to offer potentially to our teachers, if there were mid-career teachers who were interested in shifting to the field of counseling, a way that they could continue to be employees during the process, where we would have them trained in a cohort here that would allow them to become licensed clinical social workers, and then would allow them to stay with us. My goal ultimately would be to put another licensed clinical counselor in every building, to allow us to provide services, not just during the school day, but to flex some of these hours to have people available in the afternoons and evenings, so that it could be family counseling, because we know in a lot of these situations, there are times that it's beneficial for a child to sit down with mom and dad or their guardian and their counselor. The other thing is, it's now another resource for our teachers. For that child who provides behavioral challenges, they're in our MTSS system. This is another tiered support that we are able to provide both students and teachers. So as we go forward and as we move forward, we want our community to know that we understand that there is a mental health crisis among young people today. And it doesn't just wait till high school. But we also know that we're going to have to be proactive in having trained professionals available for our students and our families. And the best way I can think of doing this is for us to be really proactive and say, we've got a solution, we've got a plan, we'd like to be able to try it. I believe there's funding available, if we set this up right, to be able to be the first and to be a pilot that allows us to do this. And I'm so thankful and grateful for our teachers who, over the past 5 years especially, have been heroes in taking on all of these different challenges that we have placed in front of them. And they do it every day, and they do it incredibly well. But we also know that if we're able to provide a different level of support, that it increases our performance across the board.
Dr. Marshausen, when do you expect to potentially survey or gauge interest with staff on that? Obviously, cart before the horse sort of conversation, but at what point would we go down that path?
We're having a second meeting in October where we've asked Ohio State to go back and kind of look at what does the master's program look like, what does the clinical field experience look like, how could, if we had a cohort, what does it look like for us to be able to put together a program? Once we know what the program is, I'll get with my friend Mrs. O'Connor over there, and we'll talk about how we gauge teacher interest in this. Some of that would be targeted. And part of that is we know that our teachers are staying with us longer and longer. For some folks, it may be a welcome opportunity to stay a Dublin City Schools employee, to stay a member of our teaching staff, but to explore a different path for the second part of a career. So I'm optimistic that we would be able to get plenty of folks who would be interested. But our goal, as we have these conversations, would be to have something in place by the first of the year to be able to recruit teachers and hopefully get things started as soon as this spring going into the summer.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then finally, as we look at upcoming community conversations, and we're stopping calling these coffees because we don't have coffee at all of them. So as we have community conversations, a special community conversation next Monday night here to discuss policy instructional materials. Next Tuesday, Chamber of Commerce in the morning. We'll give the overview once again of the culture playbook for anybody in that morning group who hasn't had a chance to hear that. And then back here in October for our October community conversation, which will be in the cafe here from 7 to 8:30. The meeting next Monday will be in here, and the only reason that I've asked for that to be in here is depending on the size of the group, there are more TVs, so if I have slides, it allows people the opportunity to see what's on those monitors a little bit more clearly. So I'll answer any, student update. So Lydia, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lydia, and I am one of the student representatives. So we have a slightly longer update today because we've been in school long enough to have some things to share. First area that we wanted to talk about was the bathroom situation at Kaufman. So last year there was an issue across the district with people vandalizing the bathrooms, and administration dealt with that differently at each school, but largely it was along the lines of closing certain bathrooms or limiting which bathrooms were accessible. And that's something that has continued into this year at Kaufman, and it's providing a challenge to students because they don't have access to all the bathrooms and they don't know which bathrooms are available. So what should be a 5 or 6 minute trip is turning into a 10 or a 15-minute trip to find the bathroom and to go through the process of signing out. Students understand that there's a difficulty among administrators for how to handle this. There's no easy solution to make sure that everyone's using the bathroom appropriately, as silly as that sounds. But there is definitely a frustration among students that their trip to the bathroom is cutting into instructional time. Next, Jerome, as everyone knows, is overcrowded, and students understand that this issue is being addressed with the additions, and it's a work in progress. But it's still a concern of students from day to day. Something that we did here is that the teachers are being very mindful about being accommodating, knowing that because of the construction and because of how many classes are in the portables, it's taking students longer than maybe their allotted class change time to get between classes. And so teachers have been generally understanding about that. Thirdly, the lunches. We have switched lunch providers over the summer. As far as students have been made aware, the new carrier has not been implemented yet, but we are hoping that by the next time we offer you an update, we can say that we have new lunches and that they are very good. As far as positive things happening, high school students are looking forward to their homecomings coming up. Kaufman's is this week, Sciota's I believe is next week, and Jerome's is in early October. The Kaufman-Jerome football game last week was a highlight for many students. Very much a more normal situation than we've had over the past few years. The strings program has begun with 5th graders going to the middle school to participate in orchestra, and that's been very exciting for these 5th graders. And finally, since our last report, preschool has started. So there have been lots of little people back in the classroom and very excited to be there. So that concludes our student report for this evening.
Lydia, what school are you from?
I am from Kaufman, but I spend my whole day at Emerald.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you. And I had the opportunity to meet for lunch with our students last week, and it's always one of the highlights to hear the 4 of them share what's going on in their schools. We're working on a social media app for them, an email account for them, so they can continue to gather input from their colleagues and share it with us at the board meeting. So Lydia, thank you. And I got your recommendation submitted, so we're good there. Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions for me or for Lydia? Okay, back to you, Mr. Melody.
All right, thank you for the updates. All right, item 5B, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the attached policies. This is the second reading, and there are 13 policies attached. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right, next we have treasurer comments.
All right, thank you. So I have 4 items on the agenda tonight for your consideration. The first one is an approval of an appropriation change. So last year we received a grant from the OFCC. It was a safety grant, and when we originally approved it, we thought it was a state grant, and is actually a federal grant that's being passed through a state agency. So there's no movement or change of money. It's just a movement from a federal fund, from a state fund to a federal fund. The second item would be a student activity purpose clause for the Sciota Vegan Club. So purpose clauses just allow us to create a cash account on our books, and it also gives the club kind of guidelines for accepting revenue and then also expenses. Then we have a resolution authorizing the transfer of territory. So we have some land up at, we have a map up there. It's the OSU airport. So this land is owned by OSU, so it is tax exempt. This land, we do have this land, but it's part of a win-win agreement. So this is the final piece. Columbus City Schools had the opportunity to either accept a $1.2 million payment from us or accept this land transfer, and obviously they accepted this land transfer. So because it's tax exempt, we're not losing any funding from this, and we also did verify that there are no students in this territory. And the final item on the agenda for me tonight is two donations, $3,350 from Chapman PTO for teacher grants, and then another donation of $27,227 from the Thomas PTO for the purchase and installation of shade structures out there. And they've been working closely with Jeff Stark and team on that.
I was literally just going to ask, given the conversation that we had, Jeff, knowing some of the stuff that's coming down the pipeline with elementary school playgrounds, our PTOs, I assume, are being told or alerted before they go too far into additional investments?
Yeah, Jen has had some talks, and she can go on this, but we told the principals and to talk to their PTOs that the majority of a playground, the burden will now be on the district. In the past, just because we didn't have a PI fund until 2019 even to go into, and any funds that the school had was being used for air conditions and roofs. There's a lot of backup of maintenance. And now that we have the PI fund, we've carved away about $500,000. It's $250,000 for 2 schools each per year. And we've come up with a plan to replace all the playgrounds over the next 5 to 7 years. You know, a couple of them are brand new. And we're going off of a list that's been, we have a professional assessment that comes out to make sure the playgrounds are safe. And we've told the PTOs this. Now, if a PTO wants to help out an individual school with one item, like a shade structure or something like that, absolutely. But what we're asking that the PTOs not do is fund an entire playground, just because it's just, not every PTO can do that, and it doesn't give the student the same experience. So that's why we're helping with the PI funds.
Do you anticipate the same company to build the various playgrounds when they're due, just as a cost savings measure, or will it just be kind of school by school dependent?
So what we did on that is it's not considered a capital improvement, so we didn't publicly bid this. We did an RFP, request for proposal. And we did the request for, this is the first time we've done this. It was, you know, a major project with playgrounds in years. So again, the elementary principals put together a council of 5 or 6 principals, and we actually had them interview with us all the members of the RFP who came through. And that's what the board approved, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago. And the people we hired, they design and construct. Now, our goal would be to keep the same designer and construction throughout the next 5 years, you know, if they're doing, but we do have the latitude. We don't have a commitment to them, because if their job were to fail or that they don't pass through on their commitments or their quality, then what we would do is RFP again. But whatever we do, the same consistent design and colors will be used for the next 5 to 7 years. And even the design, by the way, there is some latitude, because as things change and things get updated, you don't want to just stick with something because you have it. But that's why we have a small council, and the elementary principals have been great on this, giving their time to really give us that input of what they're looking for.
The only thing I would add, thank you, Mr. Stark, is the reason we were hesitating with the PTO contribution is we do have an equity concern if a PTO did have a lot more contribution. So we're going to keep a close eye on that. If something comes through, Mr. Stark will watch it. We'll talk to the principal and say, okay, what's your thinking behind this? Our only concern is schools that aren't going to get an update for 5 years. They might need to augment their current playground. So we'll keep an eye on it and do our best to keep it fair and equitable.
What about the schools that currently already have shade structures raised by PTO funds, or it seems a lot of PTOs have line items for updates to playgrounds? Is this something that also we can address on, is it Thursday, president's meeting?
We talked to the PTO presidents a couple times last year.
Okay.
Sometimes reminders are needed. We're not going to tear anything down that a PTO has built, obviously.
Right.
It's going to stay. But the council that Mr. Stark referred to, those principals went to every single playground, and they created a list of priorities, what playgrounds needed done. Meanwhile, Jeff, behind the scenes, was having a professional take a look. You could speak about that professional, and they were almost exactly in line. So the structures that needed to be replaced matched the principal's priorities. And so, Chapman's a great example. They have had, their PTO has really contributed to a really nice playground, and we appreciate that, but we don't want every school to feel like they have to do that.
Last question. You answered some of this earlier privately, but with the committees, the playground committees, are those just principals? Are there others on the committee that we can get feedback from as far as?
It's a representative committee. So the committee that I meet with is just principals. The intent of it, though, is for each principal to meet with their PTO, with their community, with their staff, and bring with them to these conversations everything, all the feedback that they've had, kind of put it all together.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now item 6F. It is recommended by the treasurer that the Board of Education approve 6B, approval of the appropriation change, 6C, approval of the student activity purpose clause, 6D, approval of the resolution authorizing transfer of territory, and 6E, approval of donations. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Melody.
Yes. Okay, motion passes 5-0. And is it safe to say that that is the last time we will ever have to talk about the win-win agreement at a board meeting? All right, it's been a long time coming. So that is the final step in solidifying our boundaries as a district and financial base. So glad we finally got that accomplished. All right, Deputy Superintendent comments.
And I'm going to pass the baton to Mr. Andres.
Thank you very much. I would just want to talk briefly about the Panorama Student Survey. We value feedback from our students, as evidenced by Lydia today and the additional members of her team. We use that feedback to improve the student experience here in Dublin. And one way we do that is through Panorama. Panorama is between 35 and 50 questions that we ask to students in grades 3 through 12. And we've done that in the fall and spring since the fall of 2018. We ask students about how they feel in class, about their performance in school, about feelings related to school, and how they get help from their friends or from teachers. Overall, our kids report things like they feel very safe. They have good relationships with peers and with teachers, and they have a pretty good sense of belonging in our schools. But not every child feels that way. Those are strengths overall, but we're always looking to get better in those areas. Some areas that we find from this survey that are concerning is how much kids worry about their grades. Even as young as third grade, a lot of kids are really worried about grades. They worry about remembering what they learned last year into this year, so retaining information. They also need help with strategies to stay calm when things don't go their way, which, as you can imagine, that happens a lot when you're a kid and into adulthood. Principals use the data from the Panorama survey for their building goals each year. Teachers use this data to be able to ensure that some of the strategies that they implement in their classroom are effective for their kids. You know, Panorama is not the only tool that we have for this. There's lots of ways we get feedback from kids, but one thing that it does is it allows us to take this information and compare it to millions of students across the country and look at a national data set to see where we fit in line with others. We take survey administration very seriously because at the end of the day, it requires time, instructional time, for kids to be able to take a survey. So anytime we're talking about surveys, we have good conversations about whether the time it takes is worth the data that it will produce. We also review surveys in accordance with Policy 2416, which talks about if surveys or assessments are going to reveal sensitive information in 8 protected areas, then that instrument needs to be an opt-in. So a parent would have to say, yes, I want in, as opposed to if a survey doesn't include information in those areas, then what we have is an opportunity for parents to review questions and opt their child out. In this case for Panorama, we reviewed the questions, all of them, and determined that this is an opt-out survey. So information will go out later this week where parents will have an opportunity to review all of the questions that their child will be asked at school and then make the best decision for them and their family on whether or not they'd like their child to participate or they'd like to opt them out. The window for the survey is the 28th through October 7th, and then the plan is to administer it again the 2 weeks when we get back, 2 to 3 weeks we get back after spring break, which would be similar to what we've done in the past. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has it on Panorama.
What's the time frame for parents to review questions before we start a survey?
It'll be in the ballpark of a week and a half to 2 weeks.
Okay, and if parents don't opt in or out?
Sure, so because it's an opt-out survey, we'll send a Google form out and say, if you'd like to opt your child out, complete this form, and your child won't take it. And if we don't hear back from you, then we will give the child the survey during school.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
2 questions.
Yeah.
Do you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but the 8 sensitive areas, do you know what those are?
Why, yes, I do.
Okay, thank
Thanks
you.
for asking.
Thanks.
Word for word from Policy 2416. Political affiliations or beliefs of the student or the student's parent, mental or psychological problems of the student or the student's family, sex behavior or attitudes, illegal, antisocial, self-incriminating or demeaning behavior, critical appraisals of others with whom respondents have close family relationships, legally recognized privileged or analogous relationships such as with lawyers, doctors, or ministers, religious practices, affiliations, or beliefs of the student or the student's parent, income other than as required by law to determine program eligibility.
Okay, so because you said this survey you've determined would be an opt-out survey, is it understood that none of those 8 questions are on this survey, or topics are on this particular survey?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for the updates. All right, Chief Operating Officer's comments.
Thank you. Tonight, we only have one item for the board to approve, and we're recommending, let me give you a little quick background on this. As you know, we have a bond for high school work, and Jerome is taking up a large part of that bond with their additions, and we're also working at Sciota to do some work, which is the scope is not exactly done yet, but one of the items at Sciota is going to be a multi-use athletic facility, much like Jerome has, actually exactly like Jerome has. We're speccing it to be the same size, same everything for that consistency and equity pace. So while we didn't plan on it originally, as we got into the Sciota work to give them a multi-hitting facility, which we're drawing up now, we thought at the same time, if it comes in affordable, and that's what we're working on now, we would mimic it and put one at Kaufman at the same time, because it would be more economical for us to build both together at the same time than if we do it in stages. And so we should be getting final estimate pricing back on everything in the next month as we try to get this started next year. But we need to get a design firm, because the design firm that we hired to do Sciota and Jerome, Kaufman was not in their scope. So we had to, it's just a procedural matter, put out a new request for qualifications. We are recommending the same vendor that has started this process, which is Moody Nolan, partnered with Perkins and Will. And that's what's in front of you tonight, is the scope of their work for all the design administration work to do. So why there's so much design work, even if the main design would already be done, is because at Kaufman, obviously there has to be a lot of civil work done. Where are you going to place it? On what land will you place it? How will the water retention work at the place? All the power and everything's different at Kaufman. Another thing at Kaufman is in the next 5 years, really, now we're down to 4 years, we've made a commitment to the city of Dublin. We're going to need more restrooms out in their area just because of the amount of students they have. So we're either going to do it as part of this project or a future project, but it'll get priced in right now with the new design. So tonight, for your approval, is this extra scope of work for Moody Nolan of a $201,000, $201,700, which is inclusive of everything, their basic services, supplementary services, which is only as authorized, and reimbursable expenses. Our goal is, if the board were to approve this, get a scope to the board in the next couple of weeks, because the next step would be for us to RFP a contractor, and that's a month-long process.
Okay, thank you. So item 9A is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution awarding Moody Nolan as the firm to provide design services for a multi-use athletic facility at Kaufman High School. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, questions or comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, Executive Director of Human Resources.
Good evening, members of the board. I'll start tonight with the certified agenda. On our agenda tonight, you'll see an administrator resignation. There was late resignation. You'll also see one certified resignation and then one retirement. Retirement is Laura Tucker. She'll be retiring from Dublin City Schools as a technology learning coach with 33 years of service here. The administrative hire, Carrie Craddock, is currently serving as Dean of Students at Sciota High School, and we're recommending that she be promoted to be the assistant principal to replace an outgoing administrator who resigned. We also have one new teacher hire at Davis Middle School to replace, again, a late resignation that was boarded during our last meeting. You'll see 5 certified salary changes on this agenda, along with a substitute nurse hire. There is one 6-period pay request, and then language to approve certified staff members to work Saturday school, and a few changes to extended time for the 22-23 school year. Few salary changes for supplemental contracts. We have a resignation of 2 supplemental contracts, and then there are several athletic, extracurricular, and academic supplementals on for the 22 and 23 school year. And then you'll also see pupil activity supervisor contracts that cover this school year as well, that are in athletics, extracurriculars, and academics. Moving on to the classified agenda, and before I cover that, we want to just offer our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Les Bobera. Mr. Bobera was a custodian at Dublin Jerome High School. He passed away on September 3rd after working in our district for 15 years. His name is not on the agenda, but I wanted to acknowledge him and acknowledge his service in the district. You'll see 5 resignations and 1 retirement on the classified section. John Young, custodian at Penny Elementary School, will be retiring with 11 years of service on November 4th. There are 7 new hires on tonight for your approval. There's 5 salary changes and then 4 unpaid leave of absences requests as well. And then moving on to the stipends, there's a total of 13 stipends on for your approval, along with a reading and writing workshop professional development. 2 of these stipends are revisions to previously approved items, and they're on due to a change in staff members who will be receiving them. 3 of them are for Dublin Kaufman, the ROCKS Advisory Program and Mentors, along with peer collaboration. And then 3 are for the Resident Educator Program, which provides support and mentorship for recent graduates and teachers who are still new in their career. The remainder of the stipends on the agenda include the Global Scholars Program, payment for school test coordinators, the Peers Connection Program, and then spring prep for the extended year program as well. Any questions on the HR section tonight?
I have just a quick question, Dr. Bailey, for the Global Scholars Program. Can you just say a little bit about that and how our students will be able to participate in that?
So this is my first year working with the Global Scholars Program, so I'm going to turn it over to Christy Vinny, who has more information about that.
Thanks.
Got my mic ready. I saw that coming. Sure. The Columbus Council of World Affairs sponsors the Global Scholars Diploma Program, and we've done it for several years. It started at Jerome with one cohort of students, continued, kept going through COVID, and then we've expanded that program so that students at all 3 high schools can participate. It is a 3-year program. Students apply to participate at the end of their freshman year to start their sophomore year, and they continue through the 3 years. They have a variety of experiences to be exposed to things globally and careers, and they go on field trips, and a couple during the school year. And there's a celebration of learning at the end of the event where they have the opportunity to see what the younger students see what older students did as projects that they explored based on interests, important topics they've been learning about. And so we've got advisors, one advisor at each building now, and they collaborate and kind of co-plan activities. And there is curriculum they participate in through the Columbus Council of World Affairs, through their sponsored online curriculum. This is a program that's at, I want to say 18 different districts, maybe 17 or 18 districts in central Ohio. And I think they've now started to offer it nationally as well.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
All right, thank you. Okay, item 11E. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve 11A, the approval of personnel action items certified. 11B, approval of personnel action items classified. 11C, approval of Patty McGee's service for professional development workshop. And 11D, approval of stipends. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right, Director of Community Engagement comments.
Okay, so first off, wanted to celebrate some of our students who participated in the high school tech internship program in partnership with the Educational Service Center of Ohio and the OSA, which is a software engineering and IT managed service provider locally that has an emphasis on cybersecurity for small businesses. These students collaborated to create the official Tech Day logo, which was a huge honor for them. And Ohio Tech Day is a fairly new thing. It's only been around for a couple years, and it is going to be on September 30th. We have some teachers who are also involved with that. The focus of Ohio Tech Day is to highlight and bring awareness to tech opportunities in grades K-12, higher ed, and industry. So this is a neat thing that our students and some of our staff are involved with, a newer initiative. Next, wanted to just put a reminder out there. We've got our Dublin City Schools Hall of Fame celebration, which Mr. Valentine is an inductee on that group. And we've also, no, you're not?
Mrs. May, I think I'm getting tied in.
You
to
were,
help
though.
honor
You
Mrs.
were.
May. Yes, I was.
You were, and
I was like, wow, two-time.
former inductee. I misspoke. Thank you.
Yes.
Mrs. May is going to be inducted. She'll be there virtually and through a video, though, since she is out of town, along with 5 other amazing community members. So that's open for folks to attend if they'd like, and some of you I know might be there. We also, I wanted to include an announcement that you will hear. The Ohio Department of Education is releasing their report card, which looks a little different. We're going to see that later this week be published. So we'll put that information on our website when it becomes official, when it's shared later this week. We know that our community values more than just test scores. This is one indicator of success for our students, along with many other important things that we do here in Dublin City Schools. We do expect there to be evidence of growth from our students from when they published scores back in 1819, which feels like so long ago, to now. but it is something that we'll be sure to make available when it's official. We also have, the community survey is open. It's been open since the beginning of the month, and it will be through the end of September. So we're going to continue to ask for participation so that our community, our staff, and our 6 through 12 students can give us input on what they see as important moving forward in Dublin City schools. We have our key stakeholder meetings with Mr. Melody already mentioned these, so I won't go through that again, but we have those all starting up this week. We're going to ask for all of those important groups to also help with getting that survey completed. And finally, the retired staff tailgate is coming up, and I just wanted to give you a heads up, gave you an invitation to that, board members, so you can see when that's happening. It's going to be a different take on our retired staff celebration. Usually we do a luncheon. This year we're inviting staff to attend a tailgate at Sciota and then to go to a football game. So it's going to be a fun twist. We think it's going to probably be attended well, and you're invited to join us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, items for board discussion or future agenda items?
Just to note that our next board meeting is out of our normal cadence because we will be at City Hall for that next meeting, and we will be welcoming our National Merit Recognized Scholars to City Hall for the next meeting. So if you show up on Monday, we won't be here. So
It'll be on Tuesday.
it'll be on Tuesday, and we're at City Hall on that day.
All right, if there's nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.